In this true crime investigation, we delve into the enigmatic case of Kat West, a woman who was anything but a typical stay-at-home mom. She masterfully cultivated a major online following, amassing hundreds of subscribers on a platform known for its adult-oriented content, a niche some described as the unlikely intersection of risque entertainment and wholesome suburbia. A forensic analysis of his clothes revealed absolutely nothing. No trace of liquor, no sign of blood, no bodily fluids, not a single piece of tissue or a solitary hair. Did you ever entertain the theory that this man might have just lost control one night? The problem is, there's a complete lack of evidence to support that. His background is entirely devoid of any history of violence. Our investigation today brings us to the southeastern United States, to the state of Alabama, a place known colloquially as the Cotton State and the heart of Dixie. Just south of Birmingham, running along Highway 65 toward Montgomery, you'll find the small, quiet town of Calera, with a population of approximately 16,000 residents. This was the home of the West family, a small family unit that was, by all accounts, fundamentally different. The family consisted of the father, Jeff West, the mother, Kat West, and their daughter, Lola. Kathleen West, known to everyone as Kat, was a stunning 5'2" woman who held such a deep admiration for Marilyn Monroe that she meticulously crafted her entire image in tribute to the icon. She would often state, "I love Marilyn Monroe, and I want to look just like her." Those who knew Kat described her as kind, carefree, and brimming with life. She was invariably the center of attention at any gathering. Friends fondly remembered her spontaneous nature, how she would sometimes leap from a tabletop to the couch, wearing only her undergarments, completely unconcerned about who was present. She was the definition of a free spirit. But it's often the people who shine the brightest who conceal the deepest turmoil. Kat was privately battling depression and alcohol dependency. She was in therapy, feeling profoundly lost and uncertain about her path in life, until a fateful encounter in 2004 altered her trajectory completely. Kat attended a Super Bowl party where she was introduced to a man named Jeff West. This man was different. He had a gentle, kind demeanor that immediately put her at ease. Jeff was a veteran of the United States Army, then working as a military recruiter, and Kat found herself falling completely for him. Many of their mutual friends, however, viewed them as an improbable match. Kat was a vibrant, strikingly attractive blonde with an outgoing personality, while Jeff presented as her total opposite, a man who was deeply reserved and seldom showed his emotions. He projected a constant state of calm that made him almost impossible to read. Yet, none of that mattered, as the two were utterly captivated with one another. Things moved quickly, and within that same year, they made the decision to marry in Las Vegas. His work prompted several moves over the next few years, until they finally settled down in the town of Calera, Alabama. Jeff secured a job as a campus security officer at Birmingham Southern College, while Kat took on the role of a stay-at-home mother to raise their daughter, who was born in 2005, just 1 year following their wedding. The West family seemed to have all the ingredients for a stable and happy existence. They were not wealthy, but they lived a life of peace and comfort. By 2015, they had even built their own home, but that period of tranquility was not destined to last. The pressures of raising a child can be draining for a multitude of reasons. The responsibilities are well documented, but the emotional toll it takes on a couple is often left unspoken. The relentless attention their daughter required, compounded by Jeff's job and their everyday obligations, made personal time together nearly impossible to find. It was then that Jeff and Kathleen acknowledged how desperately they needed to reconnect as a couple. On Friday night, January 12, 2018, Jeff and Kat decided to do precisely that. It was their designated date night. They arranged for their daughter to stay at Jeff's parents' house for the weekend, and then drove to Papa Do's Seafood Kitchen in downtown Birmingham. Following dinner, their evening continued at the Red Zone Bar and Grill, where they shared a few drinks before heading home. On the way, they made a final detour to the R&R Wine and Liquor store just north of Calera. Surveillance footage shows Jeff purchasing a bottle of Jameson whiskey as Kat selects a bottle of Lucid Absinthe. They both appeared happy, and the camera even captured Jeff smiling. He gave his wife a playful pat on the back as they headed out. To the store clerk, everything looked picture perfect. They seemed like an ideal couple. Back at their house, the drinking continued. Reports indicate they each had about 5 or 6 drinks that evening, sometime around 10 p.m. Jeff uploaded a photo to Instagram, a simple post that, to anyone scrolling by, painted a picture of a fun, romantic night for the two of them. But no one could have predicted that in less than 7 hours, Cat West would be discovered in the middle of the street, clad only in a bra, lying in a pool of her own blood, female in the roadway, partially clothed. CPR no longer in progress. That chilling message you just heard crackled over the radio from the dispatcher. It was a broadcast to all patrol units in the vicinity. But what made it so jarring was that the officers, just like you, were hearing a call they hadn't encountered in over a decade. A call for a potential homicide in their sleepy town. But what they couldn't possibly know at that moment was that this case would not only be the first homicide in 10 years, but it would also be so bizarre that even the victim's own family would eventually stand in support of the very man accused of taking their only daughter's life. When police pulled up to the scene, mere feet from the West family's front door, they were greeted by a woman named Makosha and her father. Makosha explained that her workday starts exceptionally early, and on that particular morning, she was one of the first residents out of the house. While driving down the road toward Highway 65, something unusual in the middle of the street caught her eye. She pulled over, and a horrifying realization dawned on her. It looked like a woman's body. It was lying completely still. In a state of panic, she raced back home to get her father. When they returned to the scene, he cautiously approached the body and placed a hand on the woman's back. Her skin was cold to the touch. After checking again, he confirmed she wasn't breathing. The body was located on the opposite side of the street, positioned directly in front of her own home, and she was wearing nothing but a sports bra. A significant amount of blood was visible, originating from a head wound. Next to her lay her phone and a bottle of lucid absinthe. By this point, the night air was filled with the sound of approaching police sirens and the barking of neighborhood dogs, drawing many residents out of their homes. It didn't take them long to recognize the victim. It was their neighbor, Cat West, who lived just a stone's throw away with her husband and their daughter. The first question on the officers' minds was the whereabouts of her husband, especially since nearly every other neighbor was already outside. But Jeff, curiously, was not part of the crowd. Instead, he was observed standing calmly in the doorway of his home. This immediately struck detectives as peculiar, but his next actions were even more unsettling. When an officer approached to inform him that his wife had been found, he showed no visible reaction, no movement, no panic, not even a flicker of surprise. He remained composed, exhibiting that same quiet demeanor he was known for, leaving detectives to wonder if they were witnessing a man in profound shock, or a killer desperately trying to maintain his composure. Jeff simply stated that the police sirens had woken him up and that he'd been searching for his wife inside the house. This, of course, led to the obvious question. Why did you need to look for her? Shouldn't she have been in bed asleep next to you? It was at this point that Jeff started to recount the events of the night, beginning from when he posted that Instagram photo around 10 p.m., all the way until he woke up. He claimed they had planned to be intimate that evening, but he became agitated when he noticed she was distracted by her phone. In a fit of frustration, he said he grabbed the phone and tossed it out the front door into the street. An argument ensued, and to avoid escalating the situation, he went upstairs to bed, assuming she would eventually follow. But she never came up. His account immediately raised red flags for investigators, because the woman who discovered the body had told officers that while she was on the phone with 911, she had a clear view of Jeff pacing back and forth inside his house. It stuck in her memory because his behavior seemed so odd at the time. This directly contradicted his claim of being woken by the sirens. He was already awake long before the first police car arrived. Still, at that moment, detectives were dealing with a baffling crime scene, one too perplexing to form any concrete theory without an official autopsy. Investigators noted 2 separate pools of blood, the phone, and the bottle of liquor near the body. And considering her likely level of intoxication, the possibility that Cat had simply fallen couldn't be ruled out. The possibility that she had struck her head, attempted to rise, and then collapsed again was certainly on the table. For now, her body was transported to the medical examiner's office for a comprehensive autopsy. The Calera police chief described the homicide as a devastating tragedy for his community. This morning, the chief addressed the case publicly, releasing several new pieces of information. More details are emerging about what happened to Cat West on the night she was killed. Police Chief Sean Lemley confirmed to CBS 42 that her death was the result of blunt force trauma. The police chief confirmed to me that his department had no record of ever responding to prior domestic disturbances at the couple's residence. Investigators immediately began a deep dive into her life, searching for anyone who might have had a motive to want her out of the picture. But what they were about to uncover was that Cat wasn't merely a mother or a housewife. She cultivated an online presence that would expand the potential suspect list to more than 50,000 people. The first bombshell dropped when they discovered Kat had an account on OnlyFans, where she provided exclusive content to subscribers for $15 a month. This single detail was enough to make investigators pivot, refocusing their suspicions squarely on Jeff, because absolutely no one in Kat's inner circle had any inkling about this secret life. Their working theory was simple. Jeff must have found out, flown into a jealous rage, and killed her. But when they confronted Jeff with this discovery, the entire narrative shifted. Jeff, it turned out, already knew all about her OnlyFans account. In fact, he often helped her produce the content her followers requested. As proof, he showed the detectives a photo on his phone he had taken of Kat, posing in her lingerie. Digital records confirmed the image had been uploaded to her account at the exact time he had specified. As jarring as this revelation was, it completely shattered the jealous husband theory. Friends later corroborated Jeff's story, stating he was never controlling about what Kat wore, and that he consistently supported her choices. Everyone who knew them agreed they were genuinely in love and had a strong partnership. While detectives were still trying to process this new information, the autopsy report finally arrived. The results revealed that Kat's blood alcohol level was 0.23%, which is 3 times the legal limit. Traces of seminal fluid were also found, but the sample was too degraded for a DNA profile. The medical examiner determined the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. He noted that, given Kat's height of 5 feet, 4 inches, it was highly improbable she could have sustained such a catastrophic injury from a simple fall. The wound itself was a perfect match for the length of the liquor bottle found next to her body. When Sergeant Milhoff arrived on scene, he noticed something peculiar. Kat's phone and the bottle of absinthe were positioned perfectly parallel to each other, as if they had been deliberately placed. It seemed impossible for them to have landed that way by chance. Forensic testing found Jeff's fingerprints on the bottle specifically. His thumb and ring fingerprints were oriented facing downward, which indicated he had held it by the neck. Kat's blood was also found on the base of the bottle, but that didn't definitively prove it was the weapon, as he could have held it that way while taking it out of a shopping bag. Investigators also noted 2 separate pools of blood, one on the grass near the house and another in the street where her body was ultimately found. For Kat to have died accidentally, she would have had to fall, bleed profusely, get back up, walk all the way across the street, fall a second time, and die there. Digital evidence from that night revealed even more granular details. The fitness app on Kat's phone logged her last movements between 10:45 and 10:54 p.m., showing she walked a total of 64 meters before stopping for good. The home security system corroborated this, showing the front door opened and closed at 10:54 p.m., matching those movements exactly. Then, the door opened again at 1 a.m. and stayed open for hours until it was shut at 5 a.m. Jeff's phone data showed his last activity occurred between 11:03 and 11:10 p.m., just 7 minutes after the door was first closed. After that, there was radio silence until 5 a.m., when it recorded 59 steps between 5:12 and 5:22. That activity fell within the same window of time the front door was finally secured. But the one thing no one could explain was what happened at 1 a.m., when the door mysteriously opened. For the detectives, this digital evidence was the linchpin of their case against him, as the timing of his movements perfectly aligned with Kat's activity, and the precise opening and closing of the door. The data confirmed Jeff was awake long after Kat's movements ceased, and that the door was opened in the dead of night, when no one else was home. To them, this meant he had to be the one responsible. Police also explored the possibility that one of Kat's OnlyFans followers could have tracked her down and murdered her, but the investigation turned up no such suspects. The neighbors reported they hadn't heard any disturbances that night, or the following morning, which made the idea of a violent, external altercation seem highly unlikely. But with the fingerprints, the autopsy findings, and the digital timeline, Jeff's situation was looking more grim by the minute. On February 22, 2018, following 6 weeks of intense investigation, authorities made the decision to arrest Jeff West for the murder of his wife. He was taken into custody outside his home that morning and booked into the Shelby County Jail. His bail was set at $500,000, a sum he was unable to post. Before his trial could even begin, the news broke. An arrest in a murder investigation that has captured nationwide attention. It's been over a month now since Kathleen West was found dead, and tonight, her husband, Jeff West, is behind bars, accused in her death. CBS 42 News reporter Michael Clark is live in our newsroom, just back from Calera. And Michael, this case has really captivated the neighbors down in that town. Yeah, it certainly has. And its reach extends even further, especially after a Facebook page was created for people to discuss the investigation, which is centered in what locals describe as a normally quiet neighborhood. A swarm of investigators provided an unexpected interruption to Dwayne Williams' breakfast. He said about 4 more cars followed right behind. You know, they all jumped out. The guy was already standing outside, he had his hands up, and he immediately got on the ground. Williams watched as police arrested Jeff West, who is now charged with murder, accused of killing his wife, Kathleen, just last month. For the most part, we know exactly what happened in this case. I mean, we can't tell you verbatim what was being said one way or the other, but we are confident we know what happened that night. We do have evidence to support that conclusion, but again, releasing that evidence now could hinder the prosecution. The body of Kathleen West was discovered outside her home on January 15th. West was a wife and a mother, who also worked as an adult content creator on her subscription-based website. The police chief tells us he hopes this arrest will help bring the victim's family a measure of closure. This is a tragedy. There's a victim, and this victim has a family. There is also an alleged offender who has a family. It's a tragedy all the way around for everyone involved. Throughout this time, investigators came to realize that their entire case was built on circumstantial evidence. There wasn't one single piece of direct evidence proving Jeff was the killer. Jeff explained to detectives that when Kat drank, she had a peculiar habit of taking off her clothes and jumping on the trampoline in their backyard. It sounded like a bizarre story, but what was even more shocking was that Kat's own mother corroborated it. She testified that her daughter frequently disrobed and jumped around after drinking, which would explain why Kat was found wearing only a sports bra and no underwear. The detectives began to worry that their case might not be strong enough to hold up in court. Before the trial, the prosecution offered Jeff a plea deal. If he pleaded guilty to killing his wife, he would be released immediately for time served. But Jeff flatly refused. He maintained his innocence, insisting he did not kill his wife and that her death was a tragic accident. Because of this decision, he would remain behind bars until his trial, which wouldn't commence until November 2020, nearly 3 years after Kat's death. During the trial, the prosecution laid out their case, arguing that Jeff had killed his wife by striking her in the head with a liquor bottle. They supported this claim with his fingerprints on the bottle, the security system logs, the phone data, and the forensic reports. Investigators also found Kat's blood on a shirt in the laundry hamper and on a towel taken from the master bedroom, pointing to 2 separate pools of blood. They also presented the meticulously placed bottle next to her phone as more proof of a cover-up, while the defense countered that Kat's death was a tragic accident caused by a fall. The defense team offered no theory of a third-party culprit, which meant all evidence of a homicide pointed directly at Jeff, yet they emphasized that no blood or DNA was found on his clothes or on his hands. Lab analysis found no traces of hair or biological tissue on the absinthe bottle, and the house itself showed no signs of a struggle. Jeff consistently denied ever harming his wife, stating, "I have never hit her in my life. I would never harm my wife, not even by mistake." The case attracted widespread media attention due to Kat's work on OnlyFans, placing intense pressure on the jury to remain objective. Over 5 days of testimony, the court reviewed dozens of text messages and recordings between the couple. Most exchanges revealed normal arguments about everyday matters, with nothing suggesting serious violence. But they did expose clear tension in the relationship. Just 8 days before her death, Kat texted Jeff, saying, "I know you are scared to tell me you don't want to be with me anymore, but lying hurts me more." She later warned him that he was throwing away a 14-year marriage, though she also continued sending him intimate photos, thanking him for making her feel beautiful and wanted. Testimony at the Shelby County Courthouse that day stretched well into the evening hours, finally wrapping up around 6:30 that night, as cameras captured law enforcement escorting Jeff West from the premises. Day 3 of the trial began with a review of text messages exchanged between Jeff and Kat West in the weeks leading up to her death. Those messages, presented in court on Thursday, showed Kat West was upset with her husband, Jeff, in December of 2017, for not defending her when his mother treated her poorly. Another series of texts from January of 2018 revealed Kat questioning Jeff's love for her, and also taking issue with his heavy alcohol consumption. Video from a police interrogation showed Jeff admitting that he and Kat drank excessively on the last night. She was seen alive, but he maintained that he passed out before anything else could have happened. Kat's body was discovered near their Calera home in the early morning hours of January 13, 2018, and Jeff went on to insist that Kat had never been unfaithful during their marriage. He also flatly denied any involvement in her death. As the trial prepared to resume, the text messages also revealed that Kat was deeply unhappy in her intimate life. She wanted to be intimate 4 or 5 times a week, a pace Jeff apparently could not maintain. And she even mentioned a curiosity about having brief romantic encounters with other women, which may have added another layer of strain to their marriage. What was even more surprising during the trial was that not only did Jeff's parents defend him, but Kat's own parents also took his side on the stand, describing him as a loving, faithful husband who cared deeply for their daughter. On the surface, Jeff came across as calm, polite, and gentle. There was no hard evidence to suggest he had ever been aggressive or violent. He was an intelligent, disciplined man whose military background had taught him how to control his emotions in stressful situations, though some theorized that this same discipline helped him conceal his true self. The jury, however, focused solely on the evidence presented, not on perceptions of his personality, and after just 5 hours of deliberation, they reached a unanimous verdict. William Jeffrey West was found guilty of manslaughter in the death of his wife, Kathleen West. The jury concluded that on the night of the incident, after she threw her phone, Jeff followed Kat outside while carrying the liquor bottle. They believed he struck her on the head, and then, consumed by panic, tried to stage the scene to look like an accident, placing the bottle neatly beside her phone before going back inside, all while pretending he knew nothing. Jeff showed no emotion as the verdict was read. He looked frozen, as if in a state of complete shock. Judge William Bostic handed down a sentence of 16 years, giving Jeff credit for the 3 years he had already served during the investigation, while also noting his clean criminal record. The judge also considered the heartfelt pleas for mercy from his daughter, his mother, and even Kat's own mother. As it stands, Jeff West is scheduled for release in February of 2034. He pursued an appeal, but it was ultimately denied when the Alabama Supreme Court rejected the case from the Shelby County man convicted of killing his wife. The High Court refused to overturn the lower appeals court's decision, effectively ending William Jeffrey West's legal challenge. He received a 16-year prison sentence last year for the death of his wife, Kat West, an online adult entertainer, who was found dead on the street near their Calera home. This all began in January of 2018. In the end, the death of Kathleen West was a tragedy in every sense, whether it was a terrible accident or a calculated murder. Her family and friends lost a person they loved dearly. And even though most of those close to her stood by Jeff, they all felt they had lost 2 people, not just one. Their young daughter lost both of her parents, her mother, gone forever, and her father, locked away behind bars. Kat was never your typical wife or mother. She was strong, confident, and lived life entirely on her own terms. She loved her family fiercely, but the media was quick to label her as a woman leading a secret double life. However, that label never quite fit. She was simply a free-spirited woman who was unafraid to be authentic. And despite the surrounding controversy, she was a devoted mother, a loyal wife, and a joyful soul. So now, the question is left for you to decide. Do you think he did it? Thank you for watching. If you found this case compelling, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime documentaries. We'll see you in the next video.